You ever think about the weight you carry? Not on your back, but in your heart? The mistakes you made, the things you didn't say, the choices you regret. Some days it feels like a shadow that follows you everywhere you go, and no matter how fast you run, you just can't shake it. I get it. I've been there too, carrying that weight, thinking you're not enough, believing the whispers that say you've messed up too much to deserve anything good. But let me tell you something, and I need you to hear this, not with your ears, but with your spirit. You are worthy of forgiveness, and that forgiveness starts with you. Forgiving yourself, it's not easy. It's not supposed to be. That's the point. But I'll tell you this, it's necessary. Because if you don't, that weight you're carrying, it'll grow heavier. It'll stop you from climbing the mountains you're meant to conquer. Let me tell you a story. It's not about someone famous, not about a superhero. It's about someone like you and me, a man who made mistakes. Let's call him David. David was a teacher, loved his students, loved his work. But one day, he made a choice. One moment of anger that got the better of him. He said something cruel to a student he cared about. And when the dust settled, he couldn't forgive himself for it. He replayed that moment in his head every night. What kind of teacher does that? He'd ask himself. Weeks turned into months. David became his own worst enemy. That one mistake defined how he saw himself. It didn't matter how many students thanked him for being the teacher who changed their lives, or how many parents sang his praises. All David could see was that one moment of failure. Now I want you to hear this next part. David didn't forgive himself until he realized something important, something life-changing. He realized that holding on to guilt wasn't helping anyone. Not him, not his students, not even the one he hurt. So one day, he made a decision. He sat down, wrote a letter to himself and said, David, you're human. You're going to make mistakes, but you're not your mistakes. He forgave himself. And from that moment, he found the strength to teach with more compassion than ever before. Do you see what happened there? Forgiveness didn't erase what David did. It didn't undo the past, but it freed him to move forward, to grow, to do better. And you, my friend, you deserve that same freedom. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you looked at yourself in the mirror and said, I forgive you? When was the last time you showed yourself the grace you'd show a friend or even a stranger? We're so quick to offer kindness to others, but when it comes to ourselves, we hold on to the hurt like it's a badge of honor. Why? What are we trying to prove? I'll tell you something I learned the hard way. Carrying guilt doesn't make you stronger. It doesn't make you more responsible. It just keeps you stuck. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't love others fully if you're not willing to love yourself first. And forgiveness, it's not about erasing what happened. It's about releasing its power over you. Think about a bird in a cage. It's trapped. It can't fly. But when you open the door, that bird doesn't hesitate. It doesn't look back. It spreads its wings and soars. That's what happens when you forgive yourself. You set yourself free. But first, you've got to open the cage. You've got to let yourself out. I know what some of you are thinking. Chadwick, you don't know what I've done. You don't know my story. And you're right. I don't know your story. But I do know this. No mistake is so big that it defines your worth. Let me take you back to something I learned at Howard University. I was in a class, struggling with a scene. I couldn't get it right, and my professor, Dr. Williams, she said something I'll never forget. She said, Chadwick, failure is a comma, not a period. A comma means there's more to the story. It's not over, and neither are you. You see, forgiving yourself is about recognizing that your mistakes don't have to be the end of your story. They can be the beginning of something greater, but only if you let them. If you're still breathing, if your heart is still beating, then you have the chance to write a new chapter. But you've got to stop rereading the same painful page. Here's something practical. I want you to try this tonight. Grab a piece of paper and write yourself a letter. Be honest. Write down what you're holding on to, what you're struggling to forgive. Be real about the pain and the mistakes. And then write these words. I forgive you. Write them as many times as you need to. Say them out loud if you have to. It's going to feel strange at first, maybe even uncomfortable, but keep at it. Every time you say it, you're chipping away at the weight on your shoulders. Every time you write it, you're opening the cage a little more. Forgiveness is a process. It doesn't happen overnight, but every step you take brings you closer to freedom. And let me tell you, when you finally let go of the guilt, the regret, the shame, it's like taking a deep breath after being underwater for too long. You feel alive, you feel whole, you feel ready. There's power in forgiving yourself, power to heal, power to grow, power to live the life you're meant to live. But you've got to take that first step. So here's my challenge to you. Tonight, when you're alone with your thoughts, look in the mirror. Don't just glance, really look. And say these words. I forgive you. I set you free. Say it until you believe it. Say it until the weight starts to lift. Because you, my friend, are worth it. This life we're living, it's a journey. And every journey comes with mistakes, with detours, with moments we wish we could take back. But those moments don't define us. What defines us is how we rise after we fall. So rise, forgive yourself, spread your wings, and fly. Thank you for taking this moment with me. If this message spoke to you, share it. Let's remind each other of the power of forgiveness, starting with ourselves.